Hi everyone, it's Danny Asling here, Head of Marketing at Gleanin. Thank you so much for joining this session today. And what we'll be covering is some insights that I wanted to share with you that we've seen over the past 12 months and going right back to 2020, a shift that we saw. And these insights are going to be foundations of how to market events better and certainly get better results on the back of that. So we'll dive straight into it. And I've been in a very fortunate position, very lucky position to have been exposed to a lot of what's going on in the industry. I'm sure you'll recognize a lot of the tech and event brands listed here. And so I've been in that fortunate position to work with a lot of these and hear about what's going on, what's working, what's not working for event marketers. But I want to go right back to 2020 because this was the time when we first, as event marketers, started to feel and experience that change. So 2020, the event landscape changed forever. Unfortunately, that was at a time when many of us saw thousands of events cancelled for a number of different reasons. And virtual experiences for our attendees really started to take center stage. And during that time, there was a lot of worries, and there still is, about low attendance, about more COVID-19 cases, different regulations coming into play, but all of that together building towards a lot of uncertainty. Now, in terms of event organisers, the big trend we saw there that event organisers almost forced to embrace digital. Many of us required to learn new technology that didn't exist pre-2020. So big change there. But it led to marketers and event organisers finding the need to create digital and different experiences for customers in order to move forward. So lots of different changes going on. One of those was around noise pollution, because everyone wanted to do virtual events. So that led to a lot of noise pollution in different marketing channels. Everyone was promoting them on social, email, everyone's inboxes were becoming filled up. And at the same time, advertising was hit with privacy legislation, which we'll come on to in a bit more detail. So that led to many of our marketing efforts simply being ignored on the back of that. Now, the privacy changes took shape in many different forms, but this was one of the ones that caught a lot of attention, which was around the iPhone. So the iPhone allowed users to opt out of advertising, made it much more difficult to track devices and track people. And there was a real call there for greater user privacy. But what that meant for marketers is that those relying so heavily on paid advertising were going to become under much more pressure as time went on. So that led, those two things, the noise pollution, the changes in privacy, meant that event marketers were simply not getting the results that they wanted to at that time. Now, that digital shift that we saw since 2020 accelerated something. And we've given that a label internally, something that we've been talking a lot about this year so far. And that digital shift has accelerated what we call the trust economy. And in the trust economy, we only listen to the people we trust. and we simply ignore everything else. And for marketers, if you're marketing an event, this means everything to you. And this change is really, really important to embrace, take on board, and to adapt. So let me give you an example of this, of what's happening right now. So we go back to 2010, and you look at a typical buyer journey of what it was like back then. If you were in the market for a new email tool, if you needed an email tool to get your communications out about your upcoming event, you're looking for a piece of software. Typically, you go onto Google, you might type in some keywords such as best email tool, something like that. You'd go through that process. You'd go through a discovery phase. You might look at a few different options that are available on the market, and you may have some criteria that could be around pricing. Maybe you've got a budget for an email tool. Maybe you're looking for certain features for that email tool, but you'd be evaluating, and ultimately then you would reach a decision, and you may go on to buy that product. That was the typical buyer journey for software back in 2010, and now we're starting to see a shift. We've seen that shift. So 2022, certainly best part of last year as well. This is how the journey goes now. So you open your phone, you message someone that you trust. Maybe it could be a colleague, a friend, someone that's in your community that you're a part of, and you ask them, what is the best email marketing tool out there? What are you using right now? And then there's a bit of FOMO around that, because you want to be using the best tool. You want to be using the tool from the people that you trust. So you're going to ask them. You're going to open up a WhatsApp message or community, and you're going to ask that question. So that's the shift. That's the shift that we've now seen in the buyer journey, and that's really important for marketers, and particularly for event marketers, which we'll come on to. So what we're seeing now, certainly what I've seen from working with some of the brands here, is that those marketers, those event marketers that are cutting through the noise pollution, that growing noise pollution, are practicing what we would call community marketing. So let's dive into what we mean by community marketing and how you can take that forward. So the definition, this is the textbook definition that we like to give at Gleanin. So using the power of your community to leverage trust and engage your buyers. So this is all about tapping in to communities that already exist. This isn't about necessarily creating your own ones. This is tapping into communities that already exist, and then leveraging the trust that exists in that community to engage people that you would like involved, or you would like to attend your event. Now, this is very, very different to influencer marketing, and I want to make that distinction because the differences are important here. So you definitely would have heard that term, influencer marketing, and you may be doing some of this already for your events, or at least experimenting with it. So influencer marketing, very, very different. So let's break that down. This is very much about a single person that has an audience that they may have built up over time. Typically, there's some form of paid relationship going on, and in exchange for promoting goods to that audience. And influencer marketing doesn't work in every single industry and vertical. We've seen influencer marketing be very, very effective in industries such as fashion. One of the big success stories there has been Gymshark, growing to billion dollar valuation, and the core of their strategy has been influencer marketing. That's how they got there. A lot of that was through very, very strategic influencer marketing. So we've seen it work in the fashion industry, in the fashion vertical, but we've also seen it fail in many others. And typically influencer marketing is driven by interruption. So putting out content in social feeds that not necessarily is going to be relevant to everyone and anyone, but the influencer is putting it out there regardless. So that's how I would define influencer marketing. Now, the difference when we talk about community marketing is this. So it's all about sources of influence. So sources of influence, this is about a group of people that are very, very relevant to a specific audience. And if you're part of a community, that could be made up of peers, it could be researchers, it could be content creators, friends, colleagues, whoever that may be, they're making up that community. And the key difference is that they are people that you trust. So that trust is already established, so that when they make a recommendation, when they make a judgment or they pass through content and you're part of that community and you've already have trust with that person, you're much more likely to listen and to engage. So that's all about being driven by insight. And that is where community marketing lives. It lives amongst those sources of influence. So that's the difference, the key difference between the two. And this isn't a new term at all. You know, communities have been about a long time. This idea of community marketing has been around for decades. And if there's any fans of Mad Men, the series, then you definitely would have heard Don say this midway through one of the series. You know, marketing is simple: tell the right story to the right group of people and in the right channels, and it will spread. And it's that principle that's been around for a long time that's very much present in how we approach community marketing. And that principle right now is more important than it ever has been, with that digital shift, noise pollution, privacy coming in, than it ever has been before. Now, the main thing that I wanted to talk about today is the rise of community marketing. We've talked about what it is, how the shift in 2020 has evolved marketing, but now what we're seeing is the rise of community marketing. One of the areas is software and technology. Some of these you may have heard of, maybe some you haven't. SparkToro is one that's been talked a lot of in 2021, and this is all about exactly what I've just talked about, sources of influence. So this tool is going to allow you to find those sources of influence in those communities. So if there are certain communities you want to tap into, be part of, figure out what's going on, what resonates with that community, then tools such as SparkToro, there are a few others that are adapting to that. That's where you'd want to be as an event marketer. Gleanin, slightly different, but very much in that community marketing space. If you've identified your sources of influence, so if you know you've got stakeholders like speakers, sponsors, exhibitors, people that have a stake in that event, then you want to make it super easy for them to help spread your message. So that's all about empowering those people within the community to help spread your message for your event. And Brandwatch has been around for a long time, but has certainly evolved. And now this one is a lot about deeply understanding your community with social listening. So understanding what's going on, what are they saying, what's that sentiment, is it positive, negative? But you're bringing that together. So suddenly now marketers are armed with technology to really tap in to community marketing and do that effectively. So just to give you a real bit more of a deep dive, when you're breaking this down even further, if you really wanted to reach your sources of influence, there's so many ways to do this with an event. So you could break this down. You could be thinking about exhibitors. Well, exhibitors are going to have their own communities. They're going to have their own WhatsApp groups that are not public. They're going to be having these conversations privately, talking to each other about, are you going to this event? Why are you not going? What speakers are you mainly looking at? There's loads of these private conversations going on channels that you can't track, you can't see right now, but those conversations are happening. And that's why it's so important to start tapping in to these sources of influence and starting to be part of those conversations. And we could talk all day about this, about the different group attendees. They're going to have their own community. Sponsors, they're going to have their own communities. But as a marketer, as an event marketer, if you successfully tap in to those sources of influence, you're going to see more engagement, you're going to see more reach, and ultimately you're going to drive more attendance for your event. So that's where you really need to be. So what I wanted to do is just finish today with some practical steps. So we just got a couple of minutes left. Think about the old world. Well, old world 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and a lot of brands even today, it would be a case that it would be only you promoting the event. Social content would be ignored. Maybe you're spending a lot of money on paid advertising, constrained by technology, but getting attendees was a real struggle, particularly to virtual events. Now, in the new world, we're seeing brands practice community marketing. It's stakeholders that are promoting those events. Their content is getting engagement because they've already got communities, they've already got trust in those communities. Suddenly social is becoming the most lucrative channel, and marketers for the first time are being empowered by that new technology, and ultimately creating sellout events. So practical steps that I'll leave you with today. This is what marketing an event looked like pre-2020 for most event organizers. You'd plan the digital event, you'd organize your content, you'd attract sponsors, you'd do some form of paid advertising, maybe you've experimented with that. You'd certainly be doing email, tapping into your email database. Problem is you're lost in the digital noise. You're putting content out there that's being ignored, particularly on social, maybe not getting the results that you so desire. And so the shift, if you really want to win in 2022, and where I'm seeing event organizers and event marketers win, it looks like this now. So you're still doing your digital events, you're organizing content, attracting sponsors, maybe doing paid advertising. You're 100% doing email because email works. But now you're adding two more parts to that strategy. One is community marketing. So you're working with the right stakeholders for your events, and you're tapping in to sources of influence. You're going where those conversations are taking place, and you're making it as easy as possible for them. And it's community that drives engagement. So I hope that's been really helpful for you. Lots to think about this year if you're running virtual events in particular, because I've seen that work so well with event organizers, but lots to think about. So I'm going to be around in the networking session. So if there are any questions about what I've discussed today, if you want to go a bit deeper, more than happy to take questions. Just reach out to me. And also, if you can't ask that question today, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn, Danny Asling, or on Twitter. So thank you very much for joining today's session, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the event. Thank you very much.